So one of the biggest misconceptions about doing this sort of thing on YouTube, talking about the witnesses, is that we just want to laugh at or criticize the witnesses. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but a large portion of us have compassion for the witnesses because we used to be in the same position. We remember what it felt like. We remember the exhaustion, the frustration, the desperation of waiting for the end to come and feeling like it was never going to come. We wanted relief from the burden of this wicked system of things, supposedly run by Satan the devil. But year in and year out, nothing happens. And though we would never dare say this out loud to each other, this meant we would never get a break from the routine. So in this video, I want to talk about 6 ways that the organization keeps its members on the hook. New year, but no end. Number 1, the Paradise Cure. Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe that you go to heaven. They only believe 144,000 go to heaven, which is a topic for a whole other video. Instead, they believe that the earth is going to be transformed into a paradise or utopia where Jehovah's Witnesses will live forever and have everything that they need. Basically, they're told that paradise is going to solve all their problems. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses suffer from chronic health conditions, financial hardships, and yes, a lot of them are just self-righteous Bible beaters who want to see themselves vindicated. But for a large portion of Jehovah's Witnesses, paradise is going to bring them relief. There's nothing wrong with having faith in something bigger than yourself or wanting relief from physical or emotional pain. The problem is, paradise for Jehovah's Witnesses is a dangling carrot. It's not a given. It's not a gift of grace and unconditional love. Jehovah's Witnesses are taught that they have to earn their salvation. They have to earn their spot in paradise by staying loyal to the Watchtower organization and its centralized leadership, the governing body. The result, unfortunately, is a form of learned helplessness. Instead of taking steps to alleviate their stress or improve their circumstances now, while still looking forward to paradise, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses neglect practical strategies that they could implement now to better their circumstances. The phrase trust in Jehovah is drilled into their brains as a replacement for common sense and being proactive about their situation. Even worse, if they did try to help themselves, they would be considered spiritually weak, lacking faith, or worse than a man without faith. The systematic manipulation and abuse of this scripture keeps good people enslaved to an organization that promises them relief so long as they keep doing what they're told. Number 2, social pressure. Image is everything in the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's not just that they're morally conservative or they like to look really clean and presentable at their meetings, but there is a constant pressure to appear perfect. You could be harboring some serious doubts or have this resentment just brewing inside of you, but for a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, coming to terms with that or making peace with themselves and living an authentic life is not worth sacrificing their reputation in the congregation. They don't want to be gossiped about or risk being humiliated and alienated by their community. And this stems from a couple of factors. For some witnesses, they receive praise and validation, they get specific privileges in the congregation, and they crave this sort of validation because they didn't grow up with it. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses came from really unstable, toxic family situations, and then the organization presented this new haven, a new family where they can be recognized and accepted. The problem with this is it's not just about finding community. The organization is inherently narcissistic. Jehovah's Witnesses believe they are the only true religion. Everyone else is wrong. In turn, this environment creates a breeding ground for narcissistic individuals and anyone with grandiose tendencies or delusions to thrive. So really, they're just stuck in a new, larger, dysfunctional family where they can continue to abuse or be abused by those who claim to love them. On a similar note, there are Jehovah's Witnesses whose entire identity is wrapped up in being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. They've dedicated their whole lives to the organization and they don't know who they are without it. They never had a chance to nurture their interests or talents, and they may not even know what they are. And often this leads to the sunk cost fallacy. Even if they suspect that the organization is a sham, many Jehovah's Witnesses will die on that hill before they admit that they've been duped, or worse, be labeled an apostate if they come out and speak up. Number 3, the urgency trap. Jehovah's Witnesses are routinely told to maintain a sense of urgency, meaning you're expected to stay on that hamster wheel, keeping up that routine of meetings and preaching so that you'll be on Jehovah's good side when Armageddon comes. They should be living every day as if the end is going to come that day. They like to repeat the scripture about Jesus coming like a thief in the night, almost turning Jesus into a sort of Santa Claus figure. You don't want to be on the naughty list when he shows up. This closely ties into the first tactic, using paradise as a motivator for good behavior. If they stay on the edge of their seats and do everything they're expected, they'll get on the good list and they'll make it into paradise. The problem is the organization has been telling its members to maintain urgency for over a century, and this whole game of Chicken Little gets really old. The result is Jehovah's Witnesses get trapped in a state of constant hypervigilance, a holding pattern that leads to anxiety and generates perfectionism. Or they get severely discouraged and burnt out, but not dare question God's timeline. So whether you're naturally the keyed up type, or you're just trying to stay alert so you're not on the wrong side of history, the urgency trap is a manipulative strategy the organization has been using for decades to make sure its members stay busy soldiers. Number 4, Jehovah's Chariot, aka false imaginary progress. This one's sneaky. If the whole maintain urgency thing just makes you want to roll your eyes, or you've been in the organization long enough that it's just completely lost all meaning, Jehovah's Chariot might be the thing that keeps you hooked. Jehovah's Chariot represents the Watchtower organization and its various policy tweaks over the years. Examples of Jehovah's Chariot over the years include making their literature lighter and snappier, changing the formatting of their meetings, introducing new technology in JW broadcasting, and they'll also use markers and anniversaries with imaginary significance like they did back in 2014. Millions of leaflets were distributed throughout the world, left in door frames and mailboxes, which supposedly, by their calculations, marked the anniversary of Jesus becoming ruler in heaven in 1914. While they would never go on record talking about this after the 1975 disaster, the 2014 100 Years of Kingdom Rule campaign generated a lot of buzz among the tired and faithful that maybe, just maybe, this means the end is coming. But perhaps the biggest example of Jehovah's Chariot in action is when the organization comes out with New Light. New Light is used to justify changing any long-standing doctrine or policy under the guise of divine guidance, even if this new concept or whatever change they made would have been condemned and shut down the day before. It's crazy making that's led even the most die-hard witnesses in hushed voices to question what the hell is going on at headquarters. Jehovah's Chariot is the equivalent of tossing a bunch of confetti in the air and waving your hands around, or playing musical chairs for 70 years. Nothing's happening. All they're doing is creating a false sense of progress when the new year rolls around and the end is not any closer. By making it look like Jehovah's organization is always hip and happening and 10 steps ahead, their objective is to whip up your pride and enthusiasm, because Jehovah's Chariot is clearly speeding up, right? No. These bureaucratic shakeups are used to breadcrumb their own followers, and if you don't keep up the pace with Jehovah's Chariot, you'll miss out on future blessings. Number 5, blood guilt. Jehovah's Witnesses are told that lives are at stake, so they need to preach as much as possible to make sure these poor souls have the chance to study with Jehovah's Witnesses, get baptized, and then they'll have the chance to get into paradise too. And of course, if they don't do this, they could be considered blood guilty. Have a look at this clip. This is former governing body member Anthony Morris fear-mongering Jehovah's Witnesses at a convention in Trinidad.
Only God, as he looks at your hands in here and all those that are tied in, does he see blood there? The humans sitting next to you, they might have an idea because they know you well and you haven't been out in service in weeks. Well, guess what? Most likely God's seeing some blood all over your hands. Or they go totally inactive and we appeal to them, we try to help, but you cannot water down what God says here. If your hands are not clean because you've been out warning, then they have blood on them and you're going to lose your life.
Not only are the witnesses in this audience tired and possibly struggling with secret doubts, they're being subjected to constant fear-mongering by their own leaders to keep up their routine, or they're possibly going to be labeled murderers by God. Number 6, fear. If nothing else, fear is one of the biggest reasons Jehovah's Witnesses keep slogging along despite mounting fatigue. They're isolated from their classmates, coworkers, and non-believing relatives, so they won't have a support network outside the organization if they ever leave. Their devout Jehovah's Witness families are leveraged against them, and they know they'll be shunned if they try to break free. The organization loves to paint outsiders as callous enemies, And if witnesses just hold on long enough, if they remain faithful, they will be rewarded. When I finally took a break from the organization, at the time I didn't fully realize or acknowledge that I was in a cult. All I knew is I can't take it anymore. I needed a break. I didn't have any major plans or know what my next steps were, but I stopped going to the meetings and I stuck with that boundary. That little break was the beginning of my fading and waking up process because I could finally rest and think things through. And what people need to know, whether they're witnesses or not, is that little break really throws you off. You immediately feel off kilter and a little guilty, like you're getting away with something. If this sounds like you, chase that feeling. That's just your body and your brain detoxing from its cult routine. And I'm not saying you won't face backlash or suspicion from the congregation or your family. Just know that it is completely normal to feel disoriented when you're trying to break the cycle. Anyways, I hope you guys found this helpful. I'm super excited about 2025, and I'll see you soon.